Thank you everybody for joining us today. My name's Darlene McLennan and I'm the Manager of the Australian Disability Clearinghouse on Education and Training, or ADCET for short. Today this webinar is being live captioned. You can see on your screen now is some tips on how to set up those closed captions if you need. But just to go through it, please click on the CC button in the toolbar that is located either at the top or the bottom of your screen. And you can also find captions via a browser, and we'll now put the link into the chat pod where you can go to that URL. Now I'd like to start by acknowledging that I'm coming from Lutchwida, Aboriginal land, sea and waterways, and I want to acknowledge with deep respect the traditional custodians on the land on which I am today, the Palawa people. I stand for a future that profoundly respects and acknowledges Aboriginals' perspectives, culture, language and history, and a continued effort to fight for Aboriginal justice, rights, paving the way for a strong future. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians on the various lands on which we are working or studying today, and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who may be participating in the webinar today. This webinar, we're going to hear from students from the TAFE sector. Since March, students have experienced substantial changes in how their education is delivered, and we're keen to hear from them about the impact, you know, the negative and the positive, some of the successful strategies and coping skills that they've developed. Last week, we hosted a similar webinar with university students, which was powerful and informing, and we had over 80 people attend that session. And I'm confident this webinar will be just as impactful. Before I throw to Deb Hindle, one of the facilitators for today, there's just a couple of more housekeeping details. This webinar will be recorded and it will be made available on ADCET in the coming days. If you're having any technical difficulties, please email us at admin@adcet.edu.au. The discussion will run, or the panel discussion will run for 40 to 50 minutes. And at the end of that time, we'll be asking the students some questions. If you have any questions for the students, please add that to the Q&A box. And in that Q&A box, you can actually rate for your favourite questions by ticking the thumbs up button, and that means that the most popular question goes to the top, and it makes it easier to ask the most popular question. If you want to have a chat to us or other members, you know, sometimes people say, hi, it's John from the Gold Coast, you can put that into the chat box. So that's where we just have general chat with each other. But please remember, if you want everybody to see your chat, to choose all panellists and attendees. Okay, I think that's it. Just quickly, I just want to thank the students for joining us today. It's fantastic to hear their stories and their experience, and also our two co-facilitators, Brandon and Deb. But I'll hand it over to you now, Deb, to do the introductions.
Thank you, Darlene, and it's an honour and a privilege to be back here again this week and co-facilitating this time as student panel. As Darlene said, we heard from university students last week, but they're only half of the equation in the tertiary picture, so we wanted to really hear from TAFE students as well. And lucky to have Brandon Taylor, who will be co-facilitating with me today. And Brandon is a manager in student support with TAFE Queensland in the Brisbane region, and I'll hand over to him in a few minutes. But first I wanted to give our student panellists a chance to introduce themselves. And I too, you know, thank them and acknowledge the courage. It's just a bit of a scary thing to step up and be part of a webinar. So I just kind of thank them for their courage and their passion and their willingness to be open and sharing their story with you. So Hayden, I'll ask you to introduce yourself first.
How's everyone? I'm Hayden Payne. I'm currently undertaking a Certificate 4 of Training and Assessment. I work in the community services sector, and I specialise in mentoring adolescents and young adults on the autism spectrum. I have a diagnosis of autism spectrum myself and Tourette syndrome.
Great, thanks Hayden. And you're from TAFE New South Wales, is that right? You're studying at TAFE New South Wales?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, that's okay. That's what I'm here for, to fill in the gaps. And I think you bring a wonderful perspective because you can talk from your own experiences, plus also the students that you also support who are attending TAFE.
Yep.
Ryan.
My name is Ryan, and I'm studying a Diploma of Community Services at the South Bank campus in Brisbane. I've been studying the diploma since the middle of 2016. I'm finally in my final semester now.
That must feel good. Thank you, Ryan. And it'll be great to have your experience of being at TAFE for a few years and that difference then that this year, that COVID has made to your studies this year. Maxine.
Good afternoon. My name is Maxine and I was studying my course online, but I went into Townsville TAFE campus for 2 days a week with disability support, and I was doing my community services in Certificate 3.
Fantastic.
I have mental health and depression and also a learning disability, but yay.
Thanks. And Maxine, you have an award coming your way, I understand.
Oh goodness, yes.
Which is a Student of the Year award, is that right?
Yes, I was nominated for Student of the Year Award, Equity, and I'm in the top 3, which is absolutely amazing. So thank you.
Congratulations. Yay. And Maxine is demonstrating today too, just coincidentally, that sometimes we just have needed to juggle our family responsibilities with our study responsibilities and our work responsibilities over the last few
Yes,
months.
absolutely.
Thank you, Maxine. Now I'm going to hand over to Brandon to maybe give a bit more introduction of himself and to start asking some of the questions. Thanks, Brandon.
Thank you very much, Deb, and thank you, Darlene. And good afternoon, everybody, and great to be here for this webinar. It's absolutely wonderful to have some of our students that we can listen to. So Maxine, Hayden, Ryan, very warm welcome to all of you. Yes, I'm the Student Support Manager here for TAFE Queensland in the Brisbane region. Ryan and I know each other quite well, and we've all been having a little bit of a chat about some of the questions that we're going to work through today, because it's really our student insight that we would like to focus on, particularly during what has been such a challenging time. So, guys, we're going to jump straight in, and Hayden, maybe if I could come to you first.
Sure.
And we'll start off nice and simply with, could you tell us what was your response when you were first informed about moving to online study?
Well, initially I would say I was slightly concerned as to how the classroom dynamic would change, what software I would need. It was an anxious time to start off with. Particularly because I've got a business and a number of other things professionally to juggle, and I'm thinking, okay, how am I going to adapt to this, and what support strategies am I going to need to put in place in order to get through this effectively? So it was more going into damage control. Initially, we had no idea. None of us had any idea as to how bad COVID would be, or how the wider social scenario in terms of just what was going on in the world, how that was going to affect when classes would resume. It was very much up in the air, and the fact that we couldn't get definitive answers or pin anything down was probably the thing that caused the most anxiety for me. I wanted information. If I had information, I'd be able to devise coping strategies, but it wasn't there, at least at first. So initially, yeah, that was my impression.
Thank you, Hayden. Yes, I think we can all relate to those feelings for sure. Ryan, could I ask you the same question? Could you give us your response? How was that for you when you were first informed?
Initially, for me, very much along the same lines as Hayden, where I was just anxious about how it was all going to happen, and I probably had a little bit more anxiety only because I didn't have access to stable internet at the time either, which meant that I didn't necessarily have access to all the resources that I needed to do the work and assessments and stuff like that. So yeah, very much anxious at the time.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. And you raise another consideration there. Maxine, was that similar to your experience?
Yes, definitely. So although I did do some of my course online because you had that option, it was part-time online. When I wasn't able to access my disability support with my beautiful disability support worker, Aisha, I got really nervous and very change. Like my children, we don't cope well with change, and it was massively changed. So I was, when I'm with Aisha, she knows my triggers. She understands like my twerks and stuff. So if I'm hyperventilating or getting anxious, she's able to calm me down, like get me a drink of water. And at home, like I don't have that support there for myself. It's just me and the children. So if I get off track at TAFE, Aisha's able to bring me back. If I don't understand something, she was able to let me know like what it was or restructure it in a way that I could understand. So it was very nervous to go online and do it by myself. Although I did have their support online, it was completely different.
Right.
Like
okay.
face-to-face is quite important for people to connect with as well. So, going into TAFE, having that coffee, saying hello to people, socializing, and then being isolated at home for 13 weeks with 3 children, it's a bit challenging.
Yeah, and thank you for that. It's a wonderfully honest insight into some of those challenges for a number of our parents as well, because we're really then leading into the impacts and how that maybe impact on people's ability to keep up with their studies, and that interaction or different or even lack of interaction.
Yes, definitely.
Hayden, maybe if I could come back to yourself there. What about those impacts on yourself? How have you managed to keep up with your studies and manage those in that changing interaction?
Well, I'd probably have to say the biggest thing is you have to be an effective self-advocate. Nobody will know your own needs in terms of being a student with a disability than yourself and the people in your immediate support network that might be able to, hey, I can see you're not traveling so well, you look a bit burnt out, are you resting appropriately? So checking in with yourself and asking those around you in your immediate support network just to say, look, if I am not looking to crash hot, let me know I might need to take some self-care time. And I would say, don't be afraid to, if you have a support need, bring it up with your teachers, your disability support advocate. If you don't really have an extended network of support within the education sector, put the feelers out. It can be a socially triggering thing to do, but you need to put your foot out and ask for support. Otherwise, you won't get it. Especially because every other non-disabled student is also going through the same processes of stress, job, caring for kids that you are. It can be quite easy for your voice to get drowned out because you're not the only one struggling. And sometimes you need to be, hey, I really need a hand here. So aside from self-care, have a routine. Make sure that you've got appropriate time management in place. We've all got lots of things to juggle, so make sure there's time for study, for research. Try not to procrastinate and put things off. No, from experience. Yeah.
There's some very practical advice there, Hayden.
No worries.
I might ask you to talk to a few more of my other students and staff.
Be happy to.
Because it's those very practical things that work, and as quite rightly as you say, you know, from experience.
Well, it's given that I work in the community sector sphere and I design programs to help people on the spectrum develop resilience-based approaches, and I'm struggling. it's a difficult time, even for somebody with experience in having those appropriate self-care strategies in place. They can fall through, and if you have a support need, ask.
That's
So
great.
Brandon, can I just pop in here, because I know we had a question from one of our listeners who was wondering how much of an advocate do you need to be to get the reasonable adjustments that you need to study. So from what I'm hearing from you, Hayden, is that was a really important part of something that you do, is that you reach out, you let people know that you're struggling and you need some adjustments. Is that right?
I would say so, yes. I mean, that's not always the easiest thing for people to do. Even though I'm autistic, I'm a naturally very social person. The Tourette's can complicate social interaction sometimes, but generally I just let it wash off and just try and get on with it. It's not something that you can devote time or worry about. But for those people who are socially anxious, if somebody else could jump in, because I'm probably going to take for a couple of minutes.
Getting the help that you require and the access support that you need is really important, especially for your mental health and your ability to function. Hayden, you just said it all. Like, there's nothing really much else I could say. Like, great job, man.
Really.
Doing amazing.
Maxine, there is, because I don't have children and you do. Like, I don't have that. How do you, as a mother, juggle that?
I can't put it in the bin, but so I just had to give them all their own time. So they all have learning difficulties as well as I do. So it was really hard because my son's in grade 6, and then I've got a preppy, and then I've got Saoirse. Me and Saoirse for 13 weeks of isolation tried counting to 10, and we still go 1, 4, 8, which is amazing. So we're getting there slowly. It's just having to find the time for each child, yourself, study, their needs. So I basically put my children's schooling over 3 days, and then I studied for 2 days. And then on the weekend, we went for a walk or something. So.
And you say,
we're talking about time management.
And you say I'm a champion. I don't have that to juggle.
Oh, no way, Hayden. You guys are doing well. You and Ryan are amazing. You give me inspiration. I really want to do my diploma. So well done. You should be very proud of yourselves.
Wonderful. This is happening without us, Brandon. This is amazing. Thank you.
Do you know, I am sat back and I'm listening and I'm thinking of the audiences that I would like you guys to come and talk to. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. And thank you for sharing this. It's wonderfully honest, but it's very real world, isn't it? You know, it's very real world.
Our world is a bit different to people that don't have additional needs. Like, we're all struggling, but if you have anxiety, depression, or anything like that, mental health issues with a disability, it's really hard sometimes to go, hey, I'm here, I need some support, or, I don't feel comfortable around heaps of people at the moment. So it's good to look after yourself and be able to be the voice of reason for other people that might be struggling out there. If 3 top people like us can get up and be like, hey, how are you? This is me. Then, maybe someone else might have the strength and encouragement to do it as well. So well done, man.
That's great, Maxine. Thank you very much. Ryan, I'd like to bring you back into the conversation there, if I could. Deb asked there, because it was a question that was put in about, do students have to be a strong advocate for themselves? please feel free to comment to that. Otherwise, I might ask you just to talk to a little bit about what some of the challenges of the online classroom have been for yourself recently.
I would say in relation to advocacy and getting reasonable adjustment, I think that really depends, like everything else, on a individual need basis. And yes, sometimes you do need to speak up and advocate a bit more strongly. But my experience with TAFE over many years now has been that it's generally been there most of the time. Occasionally I've had to mention something, but most facilitators have been fairly aware and obliging most of the time. In regards to challenges in moving to online study, that has been difficult for me at times, only because I use voice recognition software when I'm kind of doing assessments and even on Zoom and stuff like that. In order for me to use the voice recognition software, the microphone has to be on and able to go so that I can dictate into whatever I need to dictate into. But in order for me to use Zoom effectively and not interrupt people and all of those sorts of things, the microphone has to be turned off. So in the middle of class, when we have activities to do and stuff like that, it's almost impossible without support beside me, which I now don't have, for me to actually do the activities that are set during class time. I have to take those activities, I have to look back through the Zoom stuff, and then I have to do those activities for homework because I don't have any other option.
That's a great insight, and thank you for sharing that perspective, Ryan, because it's clearly presenting, as you should say, a particular challenge for yourself there and how you're studying. Thank you for that. That's really good. Guys, there's clearly been challenges for everybody, for all students, for educators, for services staff, and for different businesses, quite frankly, in what has been this wonderful year that is 2020. But we move along, and we're really interested to know from your perspective what has actually worked well for you as an online learner. Ryan, can I stay with you for that? Is there any particular comments that you'd like to make about what's actually worked well?
Yeah, as far as what's worked well, I'm going to say that the freedom to be able to kind of log in at home and not necessarily have to be up at 5 o'clock in the morning so I can get into the city for a 9 o'clock class is really awesome. In regards to being able to step away when you need to step away for whatever reason, and being able to just do that without having to try and excuse yourself or not interrupt other people while they're learning is a really positive thing, I think.
Thanks, Ryan. Maxine, is there anything that you'd like to add to that about what's worked well?
What works well for me is probably the fact that so Antia was my last teacher. We had 3 teachers during my because it was part-time, so it was over the year. we had 3 teachers, and each teacher was absolutely amazing. So we had Catherine, and then we had Anita, and then we had Antia. I hope I'm saying her name right. And at the end, because I had so much happening, I also had like a pending court case too about my lovely childhood. And so I had the 3 additional needs children study a court case on, and like some of the stuff like I wasn't able to do because I was just too much, and she let me like do it over the phone. So instead of recording myself, because I felt really uncomfortable behind the camera at the time, Antia just called me up and she asked me the questions over the phone and stuff. So she worked with me for me to be able to just finish off that module. So it wasn't like I was asking to be treated differently, but it was nice to have that option of, okay, well, this person's feeling this way. So to acknowledge and understand that I do have some difficulties with it, and I was able to still get my assignment done that way, if that makes sense.
Totally.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks, Maxine. So we're really talking about what's worked well, and there have actually been some benefits of this situation that we suddenly all found ourselves in. Hayden, is that something that was similar for you? Or?
I would say that, Australia being essentially 5 years behind the rest of the world in terms of IT infrastructure, the fact that we've had to develop this massive change of working from home, remote learning, the fact that the virus has forced us to create this infrastructure at very short notice, I think it's actually going to provide opportunities for employment and remote learning down the road for people who aren't necessarily ambulatory or have additional disabilities. It could benefit people in rural areas that don't have access to great internet services. There is a silver lining to. I don't think it's a great silver lining, but I think with a bit of innovation, we could actually be overcoming some pretty significant barriers in terms of communication and distance employment. A year ago, we weren't all studying via Zoom, or we weren't all remotely working. That wasn't outly a practice. Now it's becoming quite commonplace. And I personally have a lot of days where I'm not capable of driving or interacting with equipment in a safe manner. So I have to prioritize my work days and work tasks depending on how functional I am on a day-to-day basis. So in a way, this has actually provided some benefits for me having this infrastructure here. So.
And that's the thing with silver linings, they kind of come out of nowhere when we think, when you were saying before that it was difficult to get information, there was a lot of uncertainty, you're moving into a situation that you weren't happy with and had no control over. And sometimes in those grey moments or those dark moments, the silver linings emerge. And I love it how you've talked about those silver linings, not only for yourself, but for rural and regional communities as a whole, for people that it may suit them to work from home. So that's great, or work and study from home. I'm just wondering if there's anything in the specific way that you were taught that in the online learning that you think, I wouldn't mind keeping on doing that even if we need to go back to campus. So what's something about this time that you think, please, can they keep that?
Recordings.
Definitely.
Recordings? So lecture recordings, class recordings, Hayden?
Yeah, I'm not always in the best frame of mind to take all the information in. So being able to go back and listen at a time where I'm more on the ball, that's been a great benefit.
Yeah, good. Maxine, you were saying something then too.
The Zoom, definitely, like being able to, so if your life's a bit hectic and you can't make it into class, being able to like access it from a different, place and stuff, that was amazing. That was really helpful. And also, just Zoom. And of course recordings, except for the recordings disappeared after a week, which was really hard because you couldn't go back after a week and like revisit them or like relook at them and stuff. So I found that to be a challenging, especially since I had to break up my time between my children and myself for studying.
Yeah, especially because you're quite busy and managing everything. So I could imagine that having those available for that extra time would have been really beneficial, even if when you're recapping on things. So Zoom is a big one. And we know for people that work in this area that Zoom has been a bit of a lifesaver, and having the recordings like Hayden. What about you, Ryan? Was there anything that you think that you would like to continue in the way that you've been participating in class or learning? Or
I think for me, I would not mind the idea of the Zoom to kind of be a part of the fabric now, because I think the like has already been mentioned, the option for recordings and stuff is really useful. I mean, I still have a note taker, and I believe the note taker is still beneficial because I have used my notes before as part of referencing material for assignments. So, but being able to actually go back and look at exactly what the facilitator has said is really useful. And yeah, I think, like Maxine had mentioned, this semester it hasn't been the case for me. My facilitator has left all the recordings on Connect. So we were able to go back and have a look at those, even if it's been a few weeks. But certainly last semester for me, the one facilitator took them down after a week, which I would find it easier if they would develop a folder on Connect and just leave them all there for the duration of the semester. That would be helpful. And I had another facilitator last semester who started recording, but then said that she was going to stop because it was becoming a privacy issue. So being able to determine where those things lie would also be helpful and yeah, beneficial for other people, I think.
thank you. That's some really good practical advice. Brandon, I'll pass back to you now.
Thank you very much. Thanks, guys. It's really good to get your experience and your input. Well, I'm going to move to some slightly different questions now, because for all of the attendees and participants today, we all know that for our own professional development, when we look at our service provision, either as a team or as an individual, we have to be very honest and expect some critical and constructive feedback from our students about what works or what we could actually do better. So I'm going to throw it out there, guys, and for everybody else's benefit, it's quite a big question. Do you have any tips or feedback for teachers or for support staff on how to better engage with students online, or to increase participation in an online classroom? Hayden, can I come to you first for this one?
You can. As someone who's had to design their own courses to teach a group of adolescents, transitioning to the online environment has been difficult in terms of I don't have my learners in a room. I don't have control of what they're doing. I have to compete with smart devices, gaming consoles, and the like. So, and I may have been guilty during my own lessons once of just browsing Facebook and mucking around, which I certainly would never have done in person in class. So I think my advice for teachers, depending on the age range of your students or the demographic, I mean, obviously consider your student demographic. I work mostly with teenagers and young men, so have a participation agreement. This is what we expect. Your adult learners, I primarily work with students on the autism spectrum, but pardon my language, I have a saying in my classes: autism does not excuse arrogance, assholery, or I won't say the third thing. But essentially, yes, you have a disability. Yes, life it might be that little much harder for you. Try not to make excuses where you don't need to. We've all done it. I know I have. But when you're dealing with a student base, remember that you are competing for their time, their attention, and you're not going to have that feedback. You're not going to be able to read the room as well as you would be in a physical class. So you might want to take more frequent breaks, because it at least from my perspective, it does take more of my time and attention to focus on an online learning environment, because it could be distractions. My cat could jump on my lap. It's you go to the gym, you go to the train, you go to the train, you go to a TAFE or university. You are going there to study. When you're sitting at home, you have other things. So more frequent breaks, accountability, responsibility, and check in with your learners and go, look, do you guys need a break? Do you need a water? Do you need the loo? And depending on your classroom size, consider your learners, consider your environment, consider what you're teaching, and try and use your judgment, and be aware that you may not be able to see everything that's going on. And if in doubt, ask. Oh, visual fatigue. Wendy, you're a lifesaver. Yes, that too. And I think I'm done.
That's great, Hayden. That's great. Thank you. It's a really interesting a comment that you make about a participation agreement and what that looks like, and how that is communicated, and maybe how often that's also communicated. And as simple as just asking the room, which of course could be a very large Zoom room, are we all ready for a break now? You know, it's a simple question, but obviously you're trying to gauge. Okay, Maxine, I could tell that you were in agreement with with Hayden on those points that he's raised. So, tips or feedback for teachers or support staff on how to better engage. Anything you would like to add to that?
No, once again, Hayden's got it. You're really good at this, Hayden. Great job. No, I was really lucky where my teachers and disability support staff were really amazing. They knew that I've had a big year, and they were just genuinely happy to support me in any way I needed to be supported. So I really can't, there's nothing that I can say or suggest, but I definitely agree that, like with Hayden, that, you know, you can't use your disability as an excuse for bad behavior. You're not your behavior, you're not your disability. Like, you choose the person you want to be. So my son, I make sure that, you know, he has his tics, he has his little traits and stuff, and that's fine, but he's not allowed to be like a mean child or, you know, a bad kid or anything. Like, we just make sure that he knows what's acceptable and what's not. So just putting those ground rules in and participating and stuff like that, like, just off the bars go, this is what I expect from you, and this is what you have to do if you're going to be in my class. So basic respect, you know, stuff like that.
Good to hear. Thank you, Maxine. Ryan, I know that you had some tips and feedback. Would you like to talk to that for a moment, please?
Yeah, I've just kind of mentioned that it would be good if all facilitators got complete access to Zoom. My facilitator that I have this semester is a part-time facilitator and hadn't been given full access to Zoom yet when she had started the semester, which made it really difficult for her because she was unable to record to start with, and then she doesn't have access to breakout rooms, which I think breakout rooms are a huge part of the learning environment because it puts people within groups and being able to work together as a team and things like that. I think that's very important as part of the natural learning process. And the other thing that I did mention is that I would like to see facilitators and teachers in a neutral environment where they can safely leave their camera on, despite what their students may wish to do, only because I find, particularly this semester, people are less likely to engage if they don't have any sort of body language or facial expression or anything to kind of read off like that and get the positive vibes going. So, yeah.
Thanks, Ryan. Again, the camera is a new one for all of us, for educators as well as students. And it's interesting because we know a lot of people don't actually like being on camera, even though we spend our lives face to face with people. Ryan, I'm going to stay with you because we wanted to just also ask if you could give some advice now to a new student who is about to commence study in an online environment. What would you say to them?
Well, the advice I'd give is similar to things that Hayden mentioned earlier in, just goal setting and trying to keep yourself engaged in the classroom environment, whatever that classroom environment looks like, whether it's in class or on Zoom or whatever the case may be. Sure, you can have your phone or tablet somewhere within about 2 meters so that you can get to it if you need to get to it. But I would suggest probably putting those other devices that you're not using for the classroom environment immediately kind of out of reach a little bit so that you're not distracted by those things unnecessarily. And just kind of set goals so you can keep motivation going, I suppose.
Thanks, Ryan. Maxine, we've got a new student who might come to you and say, Maxine, you're an award-winning student. You're a successful woman. You've managed your children, your studies, your family. What advice could you give us about studying in this new world?
So congratulations on making a positive step towards your future. It's a lot easier than it looks. Take a deep breath, one small step at a time. You got this. And I just have to say that, like, shout out to TAFE Queensland, like TAFE wherever you are, it's just absolutely amazing. Like, this day and age and the technology that we're able to access and what we're able to bring forward to the table, and the support that's given, TAFE just deserves a standing ovation. Great job, TAFE. Yeah, go for it. Like, there's nothing holding you back but yourself. It's as simple as that. Some days can be really hard, but you'll get there and you'll smile at the end of it. As I'm saying that, my child's putting shapes everywhere.
And Hayden, would you like to add anything to that about a new student? I mean, you've been a student, you're working with students, you're running a business, what do you say to this person who's about to commence their journey in this new world of study?
I would say congratulations for having the moral fibre to choose to undertake study in spite of everything that's going on at the moment. It is a difficult time. There is a tremendous amount of uncertainty, but going through, pardon me, hello. I have had nothing but positive experiences to say about my time studying over the years at TAFE. It's been probably the reason why I'm at where I'm at today. I'm a person of very modest family means. Didn't have the best start, but ultimately, education is one of the best pathways to better one's circumstances. And I don't care how smart you are. I don't care how dumb you think you are. If you think you've got everything or nothing to give the world, there is something. There is something that you can do. And even if you've got the skills, getting that piece of paper can be the difference between Oh, hi, Belinda. Sorry, former boss. What am I being asked?
So Hayden's being asked a question, it looks like here, that we can see that you probably can't. So Hayden, do you want to let everyone know what that question might be?
I'll definitely answer this, because this is coming from a former head of disability at a local branch in TAFE, and my mentor.
So I think there's a question here about what about your support at TAFE?
Brenda, do you remember the support that I received, or the support that I'm providing, or?
I think what you received.
Yeah, okay. So Belinda found me about 15 years ago walking around in circles having lost something. I'm sorry to say that has been a motif that has repeated throughout my story. I initially had some pretty high level support needs. I had a tutor, a scribe. Essentially, my teachers were helping me rephrase the nature of assessment questions so that they made sense in my mind. My intelligence wasn't the problem, but a mainstream education environment has never suited the way I learn. I was the kid at 5 years old when they're doing kindergarten. When the dinosaur expert turns up and says, "What's this?" I was the kid that says, "That's a Tyrannosaurus Rex brain case," rather than that's a dinosaur skull. So, support needs extensive, multifaceted, and fortunately has reduced over time to the point where I now train others in developing their own support networks and support methods so that they can maximize their own independence in a mainstream employment or educational environment. So I have a very silly business model because I make myself redundant.
Which is always a great motive. Back to your word motive, which is a great motive, I think, for anyone working with other people in human and health community services. If we can make ourselves redundant, I just thought we haven't got long left, and I just wanted to put a few questions to you that have been coming in. And one is about the practical, and this is from Bobby, and it's about the practical things that you needed to study online. And I know, Ryan, you started off saying that it was a little bit messy at first because you didn't have internet and you mightn't have had the hardware at home. So what advice do you have for other students who might not have a similar setup or might not have the setup that they need, haven't got the software, haven't got the hardware, haven't got the internet? So what advice would you have for students about the minimum requirements that are needed to study online?
I would say try to make sure that you have access to whatever you can and however you can get it. Sometimes that means going to the library, sometimes that means talking to friends, but importantly for me, because it's hard for me to actually travel and do all of those sorts of things, plus we were all essentially in lockdown anyway, so it's not really even possible. It was important for me to directly communicate with the faculty coordinator and say, look, this is the situation. I don't have access to stable internet. I don't have access to these things where I can get to the resources on Connect. And she then said, okay, we will organize these things for you as quickly as we can. How would you like to receive them? Either hard copies or via USB and things like that. I opted for USB because it would then be on my hard drive and probably backed up elsewhere so I could get to it later. Not to mention shuffling papers is not good when you have a physical disability. So yeah, just making sure that you access things however you can. It might mean that you need to pull in a few favors, but also importantly, make sure you communicate with all the relevant stakeholders involved so that they can offer you the support that is required.
Thank you. Yes, it's kind of tricky when you're in lockdown, like we were all essentially in lockdown, so we needed to survive with what we have. And what you said, or we asked for help, and what you said was reflected in the survey that we did around what was happening in universities and TAFEs across Australia, and it seems that the support that universities and TAFEs were able to offer their student in terms of some additional funding and doing things differently and helping them access the software or hardware that they needed was phenomenal. So it's good to hear that it played out like that for you as well. There was also a question that we had come in before the webinar, and I'm going to ask it a little bit differently. It's about what strategies you've used to manage your anxiety during this time, and you've all mentioned that anxiety has been part of that process of adjusting to the change. And ways that you've managed it that would be good for you after you finish TAFE and move into employment. But I'm going to ask you to give me 2 words that sums up what strategies have you used to manage your anxiety in a way that will be helpful for you after you finish TAFE. Hayden, do you want to give us 2 words?
Oh, 2 words. You haven't made it easy for me, Deb.
I haven't, have I? Or while you're thinking, Ryan.
Seek support.
Seek support. Nice. Yeah, so that's how you've managed your anxiety in a way that will continue, a strategy that will continue on. Nice. Seek support. I like how they link together. There you didn't need much time, Hayden. Thank you. Ryan?
Oxygen, sunshine.
Oxygen and sunshine. Love it. Love it. Can't get too much of either. Maxine, are you still there? Not sure. I know I can't see her image anymore.
I don't think she's still online.
Maybe we have a 4-year-old whose needs got greater than our needs. That's about it. 4 minutes to go. Darlene, did you want to ask any of the other questions that came up in the Q&A?
There were just two more there. There was one around the universal design. I don't know if you wanted to ask that, Deb, or
It's may have been
big
touched
question.
on. I think it is a big question, like the specific issues that could be resolved in terms of format of connected delivery content. And I think what we've come up with are some specific issues around that, the skirted of that, around the edges of that, sorry.
Yep, not a problem. No, so I think we're getting to the end. I just wonder if everybody wants to put in their 2 words in the chat. I noticed that Wendy's put in "be prepared," so it might be good to see other people's 2 words that they want to add to the chat for us all as well. So that was fantastic, and I'm sad that Wendy's not here to hear the wrap up, but it was great, and really, as I said at the beginning, I thought it was going to be a powerful session, and it was. I received some private texts from people just saying, wow, I can't wait to share this with others within my, in my TAFE. So I think, this is going to go wide, just not the impactful just for today, but it's going to be impactful going forward for others to share. So thank you so much for giving your time and wisdom, Ryan and Hayden. Brilliant, and thank you to our fantastic facilitators. I could listen to you both all day with your wisdom and your passion for your roles as well. Oh, we've got Wendy back now, so. Maxine, sorry, I've had Wendy in my brain because I just said Wendy before in the chat. So we're just wrapping up, Maxine, just saying thank you to everybody, and sorry you missed the last couple of seconds, but it was fantastic to have you here. So thank you everybody for joining us. And and it's nearly Friday. Yay.
Thank you so much for having me. I do apologize. My 4-year-olds just went and closed the computer on me, and I'm like, oh my God, no.
Love
studying and working from home.
Yeah, that's just typical my life. So
yes, welcome to 2020. All right, thank you everybody, and have a great day.
Guys, have a wonderful
Bye.
day. Bye, guys.
Thanks.
Bye.